Your second choice for this project group is something I call a massive collage, or a massive digital collage. Essentially, you're going to take photos you've taken and any other photos you want to include, photo files you want to include, and you're going to make a massive collage. I think I recommend here to make it 150 dpi with 5,000 by 8,000 pixels. That's a little bit too ambitious. Just sort of make it as large as you need to make it, but make it larger than, you know, a common 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And obviously with a little bit higher resolution if you feel like it. I'm not sure what your computers can handle. The first time I did do this project, students kind of were able to handle it at those high resolutions, but again, it'll work kind of slow and it may not work at all, so keep smaller sizes open in your head. And then try to use at least 20 different images you've taken yourselves and supplement that to kind of make a large collage. You can supplement it with anything really. Other friends' photos, you could download photos from the internet. It doesn't really matter. I would try to get towards 100 or so photos, but if you're content with a handful or 50 photos and you're able to achieve the effect with that, that's fine too. Here's an example of kind of what I'm expecting. This one obviously very well done and collected over quite a few days. Obviously the date here kind of gives you a sense of how long this took, and they basically collected a bunch of band names and logos and album art together. Here's a close-up of the actual collage, and they're kind of doing a thing where they keep everything side by side. Now, I'm not going to talk over the rest of these examples, but take a look at these examples over here. And then, there's a bunch of ways you could do this. You could do it in Photoshop, or you can bring them into Illustrator and use clipping masks. It's totally up to you what you do, as long as it's a massive collage of like 100 plus images. Okay. Hello, it's Mr. Turk again. I'm going to walk through some brief just suggestions for the digital collage project. I've got a bunch of photos open from last year's chalk walk here, and I'm going to use these photos to kind of make a massive digital collage. And again, I'm just going to walk you through kind of the selection tools and what you can do to make selections and copy objects multiple times to make your collage in Photoshop. And then at the end, I'll show you how to bring over image files into Illustrator if you want to make your collage in Illustrator, which is another option. All right, so the first thing I would probably do is create a large file to kind of compile all of your selections or your other images into for your digital collage. So to do that, you're going to go File, New. And before you say OK, make sure you name your file, obviously. And then you're going to want to make your file a little bit larger than normal. Since this is a massive digital collage, you need a lot more room. So I'm going to switch my dimension to inches. And I'm just going to make mine 12 by 12 for now. And I'm also going to turn up the resolution. If you have a low resolution and you have higher resolution photos that you're bringing into your file, that will cause those images to be of a lower resolution and a little bit grainier. So turn it up. If you know your resolution, keep it at that resolution. I think my photos are going to be at about 150 pixels per inch, so I'm going to put it at that. And then click OK. Okay, so I have my image open, and now I'm ready to run through some of the selection tools with you. I'm going to take you step by step through all of the selection tools and all of the options you have for making selections and copying images over to your collage file. And I'll just go in order. The first tool you have available to you is the marquee tool, or the selection marquee tools. Most common of these is the rectangular marquee tool. It works just how it says it works. You click and drag to create a rectangular marquee that will be a selection. So I'm going to click and drag here, and I'm just going to copy the student's head here. The way a selection tool works is as soon as you make the selection, you're able to move the selection afterwards, and you can add or subtract to the selection. To do that, just go to the selection mode in the upper left-hand corner of your options bar, and the second option is to add to your selection. If you click that option, and then click and drag near your selection, you'll add to that selection. To subtract from it, you just click the subtract from selection mode button, and then when you click and drag, you'll get rid of parts of your selection. Now, you can do that, or when you're using the selection tool, you can use modifier keys. So the Alt key will be the subtract from your selection modifier, and the Shift key will be the add to your selection modifier. So these work for all your selection tools, and they can be kind of handy when you're kind of in a hurry and you just need to add a little bit to your selection. Another option available to you when you make selection is to add a feather to the selection. This allows you to kind of soften the edges of your selection. This can be helpful if you don't want to make a crisp, kind of pixelated, hard-edged selection. So I'm just going to add a feather to this just to kind of show you what it is, and then you can use it whenever you feel like it. Let's do 5 pixels. Okay. So let's say I've got my selection ready, and again, I could have used any of the marquee tools. I could have used the ellipse or the single row marquee tool. Doesn't matter. But when I've got my selection made and I'm ready to put it in my collage, what I highly recommend you do is just use a copy and paste function. So to do that, hit Ctrl C, and then go to your collage file, and then hit Ctrl V. And that'll copy your image into your collage file. Now, obviously, my image is a bit larger and has a higher resolution than my collage file, so it's rather large inside of this file. Chances are, every time you do this, then you'll have to reduce the size of your image. Now, the way the Move tool works in Photoshop CS5 and higher is a little bit different than normal. So the Move tool in CS5 or CS6 actually has some new features to it. Of course, you can move pixels on the active layer with the Move tool, but you can also check mark this box called Show Transform Controls. This is an advantage over what you used to have to do. You used to have to go Edit, Free Transform to transform pixels. Now, you always have this option available to you, and you also have the Transform menu, but with the Show Transform Controls already turned on, you can resize an image easily. So to do that, just hold down your Shift key and then click on a corner handle here to kind of reduce the size of your image. Now, the reason you have to hold down Shift is so that you don't warp your image. Notice here, if I don't hold down Shift, my image gets kind of warped, and that's not desirable in the least. So please don't do that. Make sure you hold Shift. I'm going to cancel my transformation, and I'm going to try that again. So again, hold down Shift and click on your corner key or your corner handle to resize your image. Now, when you've got it the size you want it to be, you can confirm your transformation. Just hit the check mark in the upper right hand corner or hit Enter to confirm that transformation. Okay, so now I'm going to walk you through another selection tool. I'm going to go back to this original file. I'm just going to work with this file because I don't see a reason to work with other ones right now. To get rid of a selection, just make sure you hit Ctrl D. That's the hotkey for Deselect, and you're going to use it an awful lot, especially if you mess up or don't like a selection that you've made. If you can't remember that hotkey, go to the Select menu, and then it's the second option down, Deselect. Okay, the next selection tool I'm going to teach you how to use is the Lasso tool. The Lasso tool really doesn't have very many uses, but it's great for really quick, kind of loose selections. So initially, the first lasso tool you use is just a free-form lasso tool. So if I click and drag with this tool, I can kind of draw a selection around an object. Unless you have an extremely steady hand, this really isn't the best way to make precise selections. As you can see here, I'm kind of struggling to match the outline of this hand. And again, I can move around my selection. If you don't like it, again, you can add or subtract from your selection by holding down the Shift key to add and the Alt key to subtract from my selection here. But I'm going to show you some other features of the lasso tool here. So Ctrl D to deselect. If you click and hold on the lasso tool, you'll see there's other lasso tool options. The polygonal lasso tool is exactly what it says. It makes straight lines every time you click. And this can be great for making selections on objects like buildings or man-made objects. I'm not going to finish this selection, so I'll just double-click to confirm it and close it, and then Ctrl D to deselect it. The last option for the lasso tool is actually kind of useful in certain situations. It's the magnetic lasso tool. So if you use the magnetic lasso tool, that'll automatically detect when there's a difference in the pixel color, and it will magnetize to that area of contrast. Now you can set that tolerance in the options above, the option bar. So I'm going to turn up the contrast for 40% and then really reduce the width of pixels here. I'm not sure what frequency adjust, but you can play around with those features if you want. And what should happen is my selection will magnetize to this contrast between the hand and the student's t-shirt. So if I click and sort of like drag it along that line, you can see it's making a nice crisp selection along that area of contrast. If I want to, I can click to add points so that my selection doesn't mess up. But any area where my hand kind of matches the value of the subject I'm trying to select around, it will kind of mess up. So you can see when I get down to the thumb that's in shadow, it doesn't quite go around that perfectly. And that's okay. You can always clean up your selection later. Okay, so I'm going around, almost to the end here. I'm going to start clicking. Okay, and when I'm happy with my selection, I can double click to confirm it. So now I've got the hand selected with the lasso tool. I can hit Ctrl C and then go to my collage file and hit Ctrl V to copy it into my file. And of course I can use the move tool to rotate or resize it depending on where I want to put it and how large I want it to be. Remember to confirm your transformation when you're done. Alright, the next selection tool I'm going to teach you how to use is the wand tool. Now the wand tool only really works in certain situations. It's great for selecting large areas of color. So if I say I wanted to select the street here, I can set the tolerance pretty high, and I can check mark these boxes here. Contiguous just means it will only select pixels of like colors that are next to each other. So if I click on the sidewalk here, obviously it's going to select all the pixels that have that same color and are next to each other. And I can add to that selection if I want to by holding down Shift and then clicking on another set of pixels that are similar. The tolerance affects how many pixels within that range of color get selected. So you can see the cracks of the sidewalk aren't really selected, and that's because my tolerance isn't high enough. If I deselect and I turn up my tolerance just a little bit higher, you can see it starts to select more of that crack color there, and I can get most of that in my selection. And then I can add the other side to it too as well. The wand tool isn't great for making precise selections. In fact, it can kind of make sort of sloppy selections because it is so finicky with the tolerance. So I kind of highly recommend you only use it if you can get a good initial selection, because there's an awful lot of cleanup you have to do to make it work. So we're just going to deselect that. I'm going to show you another tool in the wand tool group that's actually really good, and that's the quick selection tool. Quick selection tool kind of uses the same principles as the wand tool, except it allows you to sort of paint your selection. So you can treat it like a brush. Remember, you can use the bracket keys to increase the size of your selection. And then what you'll want to do is you'll want to be kind of careful as you paint. Notice the crosshair in the middle of the brush. That is where you're sampling from. So if I want to get the sidewalk here, it quickly samples that color and adds to my selection and brings it right up to where it meets contrast, which is the student's body. So that's actually a really nice selection of the sidewalk there. I can add to my selection, of course. Okay. And this tool isn't perfect. In fact, I think it gets a little greedy at times, and you got to be careful with that. If I were to go into the shadow here, I might accidentally pick some of his hair. So you got to be kind of slow and careful with it. All right, let's keep going, see if I can't get it all. Okay, it seems to be doing pretty well. I might have to do a little cleanup in the glasses here. It seems to want to select his glasses as well. And as you can see by the chin there, where the shadow meets the chin, it kind of took a little bit of the chin. So it's not perfect, but it's a lot faster and a lot smarter than the wand tool. Again, if you want to copy it to your other file, hit Ctrl C, and then Ctrl V in your other file. I'm not actually going to use this selection since it's just the sidewalk. It's not interesting, so we'll just delete that layer. But in principle, you should be able to use the quick selection tool to make selections. All right, the last selection tool I'm going to show you how to use, in principle, is the best selection method. It's quick mask. So what you're going to want to probably do first is make an initial selection. So I'll just use the quick selection tool here and just make a selection of his head. Okay, and then I'm going to go into quick mask mode, and I'm going to clean up this selection using quick mask mode. Okay, to go to quick mask mode, hit Q on your keyboard, or there's a button at the bottom of your toolbox that allows you to toggle into quick mask mode. So if I click that, notice everything else is masked out red, and everything that's part of my selection is full color. To edit a quick mask, you're just going to switch to your brush tool, and you're going to paint with white or black to add or subtract from your selection. So if I want to clean up this area by my glasses here, I can make my brush a little bit smaller, and I can paint away this section of the glasses so that it's part of my selection here. You can see up here by his hair, there's an awfully complex amount of information going on here. So to get every strand of hair, you could technically sit here and paint for hours and select every strand. Quick Mask is fantastic for selecting hair, but I don't expect you to sit there and make an absolute perfect selection of every strand, so just get close. Looks like I've got pretty much everything I need. So when I hit Q again, or toggle out of Quick Mask mode, you'll notice my selection now just comprises his head. And I can continue to clean it up or toggle back and forth between the modes until I have the selection I want. To subtract from the selection, again, remember, you just got to switch to black and paint with black. And you got to be aware of what transparency your brush is set at. If you have a semi-transparent brush, then a semi-transparent brush will only select pixels transparently. So you want to be careful of your opacity when you're painting with the brush tool in the quick mask mode. So once you've got your selection made in quick mask mode, hit Q to get out of it, and then you can copy and paste your selection into your file. And it looks like that didn't copy, so let's try that again. Control C, Control V. Okay, once you've got a couple of selections copied into your collage file, what you can do then is you can copy those selections again to fill your space and kind of make, you know, sort of creative decisions with those selections. You can do that a number of ways. I'm going to recommend a couple of different ways, and then you can kind of play around with it and sort of use which one's best for you. The first option is to just kind of take an object, and you can either copy that object via selection, or you can copy it via the layer. Now, if You copy it via the layer. That's really easy. Just select your layer, and then I believe, nope. Yeah, just drag your layer listing down to the new layer button, and that'll copy it onto another layer. Now you can take this and you can rotate it, and you can do simple things like that. That'll allow you to make, you know, random shapes. You can sort of make a flower shape there. You can combine these if you want by merging layers. If you want them to be all on one layer, that kind of saves room in your layer panel, and it makes it a little less confusing when you're trying to find layers to work on, especially if you know you like what you've made and you just want to kind of collect some of your layers. So to merge layers, that's really easy. Just select your layers. Again, hold down Shift and then click on the lowest layer listing. And then I believe if you right click, one of your options is to merge layers. And that'll merge your selected layers. This is kind of a bit more organized, and it keeps things together. If I continue to copy these, another option available to you, aside from merging your layers, is to create a layer group. Layer groups are exactly what they mean. They're just sort of ways of organizing your layers into folders, essentially. To make a new layer group, just click the little folder icon at the bottom of the layer panel, and then you can click and drag those layer listings into that group. And then you can always collapse that group if you need to see all of your groups or all of your other layers. Let's work inside this group. Select an individual layer there and move that around. Gonna make this a bit bigger. Okay, so that's another option available to you. That keeps things a little bit more flexible so that you don't have to commit to a transformation or merge all your layers together. Keeps things a bit organized. Another thing you can do is make selections and copy those selections within the layer. That's kind of straightforward. Let's switch to a different layer here. Okay, so I'm working with the head of this student, and I'm just going to copy him within the layer here. To make a selection of all the pixels on a layer, just go to that layer listing, and in the layer thumbnail, hold down the Control key and click on that layer thumbnail. And you should be able to select all the pixels in that layer. Now what I can do with the Move tool is I can just hold down the Alt key and move that layer to the side. And then that selection will stay active, and I can move those pixels around. Now when I commit that transformation and deselect, those pixels will overlap the pixels underneath them. Remember, these aren't separate layers. These are pixels within a layer, so you will delete the pixels as soon as you deselect the selection. So long as it's active, you can move it around with the Move tool and you still have that information. But just be careful. Again, as soon as you deselect, Ctrl D, those all become one group of pixels, one object. This is another option too, to keep your layers organized and to sort of just keep things simple. Keep doing this, keep making selections and adding photos to your file until you have a massive digital collage, and that's kind of all you need for this assignment. Real quick before I forget, you do have the option for this assignment to save your photos and put them in Illustrator and make your collage in Illustrator if you want. I'm just going to make some recommendations for that. Real quick here, I got a file open. Let's say I want to make a quick selection of his head, and this is the part I want to save and use in my Illustrator file. So I made a selection. I want to delete the background. Okay. First, when you do that, make sure your layer isn't a locked background layer. Double click on it to make it an actual layer. And then I've selected his head, and I want to select the background. So to do that, I just need to inverse my selection. So go to Select, Inversed, and I'm just going to hit backspace to delete those pixels. Okay. And then Control D to deselect. I'm also going to crop this file to just around his head. Okay. And I'm going to save it instead of as a JPEG or some other kind of file. I'm going to save it as a ping file. The ping file allows you to save transparent pixels, which is an advantage over other file types. So go to File, Save As, give it a different name, and change the format to ping, PNG. I'm going to save mine to the desktop real quick. Click OK. And then when you're in Illustrator, you can place that file into your Illustrator file, File Place. Should be on the desktop here. Place. And you'll notice it actually has transparent pixels. So you can work with it just like you would any other image file, except now you're in Illustrator. So you can do things like the rotate and copy again commands. So if I rotate this once, and then I just hit Ctrl D, I can copy again. Now, Photoshop does have that option, but I think it's buried in a couple of menus and they don't have a hotkey for transform again. So if you really prefer working in Illustrator, you're more than welcome to work in Illustrator. Keep in mind, it's gonna not handle pixels so well. So at a certain point when you have a bunch of images in here, you may get a little bit frustrated and your computer may slow down just a bit. So be aware of that when you're working in Illustrator if you want to do that for this assignment.